fam, I mean, the thing that's just awful. Cheese Slice, why don't we put up the first picture of Palestine before and after from Hotspot, our friend Niko House over there, and his thing he's doing over there, holding it down. But showing these satellite images, fam, it's really hard. I can say this because nobody's in the house now. Everybody's left. But for anybody to kind of take this stance of trying to stand by what Israel's doing or trying to justify what they're doing, they can scream Hamas all they want, but it's really an unprincipled point of view at this point. No, fam?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, again, we're going to show videos of people who used to be Zionists
after Israel,
and they'll tell us exactly why this conflict is so simple. Go ahead, Jamie.
These are just satellite images before and after, and you can see it. It's just they're carpet bombing and they're wiping the place out. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that Israel's not part of the ICC, so the International Court, so they don't have to really abide by their rules. If they're not going to be held
watch
to any
satellite images of Gaza,
right? If they're not going to be held to any type of accountability, fam, and that's what Bassem Youssef said. Yeah, I would continue to do it if the world's going to let me do it, and the world is sitting here letting them do it. I mean, we're sitting here in fucking real time watching ethnic cleansing and a genocide as we're sitting back eating popcorn. The NBA just had their season opener. And NFL is still going, and everybody's just going through their normal fucking life while this is going on right in front of our eyes.
It's been very hard, I think, for people who have been to Palestine and who have been to the region to really actually even enjoy life. I mean, I've been finding it hard to sleep. It's been really hard to just feel normal. And that's here where obviously, I'm covering it all the time. I'm constantly talking about it. It's all we've been talking about in the newsroom. But I think in the United States, it would really be a little bit more obnoxious because people do tend to tune things out a little bit more. And although I said with this issue with Palestine, a lot of people, younger people, have become extremely aware of it and have been actually a lot of voices of reasoning on TikTok that I've seen in comparison to with other conflicts like with Russia, Ukraine. I think Israel, and I'll say this, I think Israel is losing the propaganda war because there's two wars that Israel is engaged in right now. It's engaged in obviously a military war against the Palestinian people, but it's also engaged in a propaganda war backed by the United States, of course, as well as their allies. And it's losing on that front. Because so many people have online and social media and all over the place have really debunked these smears about the Palestinians and Hamas, and this red herring that's been used via Hamas in real time. Everybody's just been debunking it time after time, and kids who are, teenagers have gone on social media and said, hey, I stand with Hamas. One influencer was offered $5,000 by an Israeli company to change his stance. He refused. I mean, we're seeing this sort of pushback. So that is the good thing that I'm seeing coming even from the West. But all in all, it's just been hard to watch what's there's like this feeling of not being able to do something. When we cover things, fam, on the ground in Latin America, when we've seen things happening, what we saw, the protests that erupted in 2020, we said, okay, let's go. Let's find a way to get there. There's no way for us to get to Palestine right now. There's no way for us to go at this point. Yeah.
And I don't even think the IDF would let us anywhere near the place where the camera, whatnot, probably. But that's beside the place. But there's a couple things I want to talk about too as well. Let's save them for let's talk about them right now since you opened up with them. First of all, there's a lot of conservatives, right? Populist right people that we kind of stood with when it came to the COVID protocols, and we agreed with them. We were the what's the word I'm looking for? Black sheep, I would say, right? Like we were the people out there, like leftists who were like, kind of on the side, and we were like, yeah, well, you have the receipts. I keep saying this about Israel-Palestine as they try to take this unprincipled stance. We have the receipts here. This is not a winning argument for you. And it's kind of interesting to see how they cried about censorship, cried about freedom of speech, and now they're pushing for censorship. Jimmy did a whole thing on it. Ben Shapiro pushing for censorship, Dave Rubin pushing for censorship, Laura Luma, who I texted yesterday. I'm like, why are you doing this? You're pushing for censorship. You wrote a book called Lumered, right? And You talked about how you were blacklisted, censored, your mouth was shut down, and now you're pushing for the same thing because it's a different issue. Marjorie Taylor Greene going, this is an insurrection. They should all be arrested. I mean, just showing their whole asses here, fam, that they really aren't for freedom of speech. They're just for freedom of speech that, they like.
Exactly. No, yeah. It's the team sports mentality that we've been talking about for a very long time, right? And I mean, again, there's no consistency here, and I don't really care what people's ideology is. Even approaching it as from a journalistic standpoint, if you're covering this conflict truthfully, you have to show how it's unequal, and how it's unequal in its coverage, like how the inequity is there, like how the way things are being slanted and the narratives are being manipulated are just completely and totally wrong, and it's undeniable at this point, I think, for the majority of us, which is why we feel so passionate about this issue.
Yeah. What do you think about people saying that the rallies are pro Hamas? I mean, well, here's the thing, fam. I know you're gonna have a very nuanced point of view about this because you understand and look at Hamas differently than about 90% of the Americans here who don't understand what it is. They really have been fed this G.I. Joe kind of description that
Right.
that's Cobra Commander over there and they're the most evil people and they just kill for the sake of killing. They're not pushing back. They really believed in the unprovoked kind of thought process. But I still think there's a conflation by people on the right who are saying this is pro-Hamas. I'm like, no, this is a pro-Palestinian, where they look at the Palestinians as being some of the most oppressed people on the planet. And from the river to the sea just means that they'll be free. They'll have equal rights. They won't be oppressed. They won't be stepped upon. You know what I'm saying? I know some other people will probably say, no, they have right of return to get their house back, and what is right, and that's a discussion for another day. But what I'm saying is that these rallies are for the Palestinians who have been oppressed, misplaced, killed, murdered on a disproportionate level than the Israelis have been, and at the I don't want to say what's the word, at the okay of the Americans.
The
I'm not saying
behest
that,
of the Americans, yeah.
at the what? The
The
behest?
behest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, but there is something different because it's not just the behest too. It's like green lighting of sorts. America
Mhm.
might say some shit. Joe Biden will like, oh, I don't want to give them weapons, or I want you to act within calm rationale within the international courts, but they know they're going to carpet bomb the fucking place, right? So
Yeah.
this conflation of pro-Hamas, it's really pro-Palestinian. What are your thoughts on that when people are trying to conflate these rallies, the whole mainstream media, as pro-Hamas?
Well, first of all, again, Hamas is a red herring used to justify the genocide of Palestinians. It has been used the same way that the word terrorism was used to genocide a bunch of Iraqis. It's the same justification that we got to go into war with Iraq, going into intervention and war in Afghanistan. It's the same type of justification the United States and Israel both are trying to use to go into Iran. They talk about Hezbollah like a terrorist faction. There is absolutely no evidence that Hamas or Hezbollah are terrorist factions. But even if you wanted to believe that they were, even anything that they could possibly have done does not even compare to what's being done to Palestinian civilians, mainly women and children. And the whole thing is Hamas is used and pushed in the media as this militant group that is equal to terrorism, equal to Al Qaeda, when the United States and Israel both support Al Qaeda factions in Syria and have been doing so for a very long time. And they're stealing Syria's oil. They're constantly targeting and attacking Syria. Israel is. And the United States, of course, is absolutely also there military wise and supported the white helmets. So the United States and its allies have supported terrorists when it's been convenient. They're supporting neo-Nazis in Donbass still. And this is a reoccurring theme. And so when we talk about Hamas, it's the complete eradication of the entire Palestinian resistance, which is made up of several groups, several factions, different brigades within Hamas, like the Qassam Brigade, and the reason they're militant is because what else are they going to do? Like what else are they going to do other than sit in this open air prison, concentration camp, and die. They don't have, normal human access to the most basic things. And as human beings, we all want to succeed and evolve and do things that fulfill us internally. They don't get any of that. So if I were born into that situation, I would want nothing more than to free myself from our the people preventing us from being free. And that's exactly what these kids who have turned into militants for the Palestinian resistance, which is made up of at least 17 factions that are far beyond Hamas, have done. And many people are divided in the opinions of Hamas. We go back to the creation via Israel and the United States, right? But then so much has changed since then. So much has changed since then. And in a way, some people say, well, at least Hamas are one of the only factions doing anything to try to do something to free us. The Fatah party, by many regards, has been sold out, has been selling out to Israel. They aren't really militant enough. So a lot of people have different opinions, but the whole point is that the entire Palestinian resistance is so big that it even goes beyond Palestine into Lebanon, into Syria, into Iran, who today issued a statement saying that if the United States and Israel continue killing all of the people in Gaza, the United States is not going to escape. They are going to act. And I don't know. I don't usually see Iran making statements like this without actually having something behind it. And I was just there. These people, they're very firm in their beliefs, and they're very united for the Palestinian cause. Nonstop pro-Palestinian rhetoric from President Raisi when he was there. So, I mean, this is something that, again, could escalate further because of the bravado and the hubris from the United States and Israel.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Bassem Youssef said it the best, the Egyptian comedian who had that interview with Piers Morgan when he talked about Hamas. He says, well, if you live in Israel and you're an Israeli, 25% of the people, especially the men, are oppressed. They're beaten, thrown in jail, charged. Their water is cut off. Their electricity is so awful. So in that situation, who are you going to be more sympathetic to? The oppressors in Israel, or those who claim they're fighting your oppressors, even if they are jihadists? So I said this yesterday on Crosstalk. Hamas is not going away. It's an ideology. And at the end of the day, you mentioned, fam, about the starting and the funding of Hamas. Just as recent as 2019, Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about funding and supporting Hamas. That's 2019. So I don't want to hear Hamas. You're full of shit. You're the ones funding it. That's it. I do want to push back on one area for the leftist, fam, where I think that it's not helping the situation. I think when you see young kids grabbing the posters of the Israelis who are kidnapped and ripping them down, I don't think that helps. I don't think that cheering it on anyway, any of the attacks, all the attacks are sad. You can sit there and say they're disproportionate, and you can definitely say they should be expected, after what Israel has done to these people for so long. That resistance was going to come back. Jamie Cheese Slice even sent me the meme with Chris Rock saying, you ain't got to praise it, but what do you expect? I think it was something like that. I hope I did my good Chris Rock there, James Cheese Slice, for you. I mean, it was to be expected. And I'm like you, fam. Mark Sloboda, Mark Scott Ritter, Occam's razor. Nope, they were watching this. Israel put their guard down, and here they tacked smack back. This isn't something, my opinion, that's a false flag or a inside job. It's to be expected. Hamas has been living down in tunnels for years and stuff. But let's get back to what I'm saying is a pushback, fam, and I would like to hear your opinions on that. The ripping down of the posters, the praising what's going on, yay, the kind of, I know it could be looked upon as David and Goliath, but do you think that helps or hurts the cause when you see that happening?
I don't think the Palestinian people are affected either way. I mean, they're still being killed, whether kids rip up posters or cheer or not. I mean, this is the thing. Like, the Hamas militants are giving back these hostages. These hostages are all saying, we've been treated fairly, we've been treated kindly. Now these Israeli hostages are being accosted by the government and just completely tortured for saying that, like not physically, but like they're being berated. They're being told, why are you doing this and speaking against Israel for telling the truth, right? So I think that a lot of Palestinian youth that are in the States and a lot of people who support the cause do see this as, saw what happened on October 7th as a win, because they saw that finally Palestine was able to break through and give Israel a taste, a fraction, a decimal point, a microscopic taste of what they have been enduring for 75 years. And at the end of the day, according to international law, Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. This is something nobody ever says. They say Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, Israel doesn't really have a right. If we go back to, was Israel a real state? A lot of countries don't even recognize Israel as a legitimate state, because they came and literally stole the land, of course, but because they were pushed by Britain and the United States from Palestinians. And so that was never dealt with. And so now we're dealing with the ramifications of that 75 years after. And you have people trying to, both sides are enduring violence. Yeah. But you didn't say crap about the violence that Palestinians have been enduring for this long. Yeah. So when kids rip up posters, which by the way, one of those girls literally debunked it. She wasn't ripping anything off. She was just saying something on Twitter. And when kids are cheering that Palestinians are fighting back, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think, I mean, the people that it's going to push away are the people that have already made up their mind that Hamas is a terrorist group. And I think nothing's going to change until some Zionists themselves or Israelis themselves go against their own government and say, okay, enough. Because I don't think we're going to get to a two-state solution. You can't coexist with this sort of sentiment by Israel.
I definitely disagree with you a little bit to think that people who are in a spot where they can't change their mind have already made their mind up. I don't think that's true when it comes to Israel and Palestine. And I say that because, just witnessing what Kurt Metzger, developed right in front of my face. Like when Mark Sloboda came in and said some stuff. First of all, the Norman Finkelstein thing was like, he goes, wait a second. I didn't know that the Gaza Strip was 25 miles by 5 miles. I'm like, yeah, it's more dense than fucking Tokyo. There's like 2.3 million people in there. And, this is something that Norman Finkelstein said too as well. We just got to kind of get the facts out there. And when people learn the facts, there's a lot of people who are ignorant to the situation. We could persuade them. So all I'm saying in that situation is I know exactly what you're coming from, fam, and I don't disagree. But I think that to get past the demonization, to get past the whole, propaganda, the weaponry, the way they've weaponized Hamas, they really have. Hamas is the excuse. I've been saying this for quite some time. The Israeli government doesn't have beef with Hamas. They have beef with the Palestinian people. It wasn't Hamas they threw off their land in 1948. It was Palestinians that they threw into the concentration camp. Hamas came out of that because of those actions. Hamas is just simply the excuse. So I wish you would just admit it now and stop bullshitting with us with this Hamas. You want that land. And we're going to show, my theory is, they want that land. Should we get into this section, fam? Or
yeah,
you have anything else to say about that?
Let's get into that section. And all I want to say is, Palestinians are being blown up to pieces, and children are being, completely, literally just blown up. I think the issue of some people, speaking out against what Israel's doing, because I don't really think that's the major focal point. I get what you're saying, but I just don't think, I think that comparison is just insane, because what is happening here is this, and what is the reaction is minimal. I mean, if my whole family got blown up, I'd be doing a lot worse than tearing down posters. I'll tell you that much.
I got it. And Mark Sloboda said at the end of the show, this whole, this is something I keep talking about. To act like what Hamas did is something out of the ordinary, extraordinary compared to what Israel's been doing for years is mind-blowing. Death is death, murder is murder, killing is killing, all war fucking sucks. So let's get past it and fucking move on. And I don't want to curse too much. But yeah, fam, I hear you. Listen, it's an information war and I'm knee deep in it, and I'm just going to always try my best to win as many people over as we can to get as many people on this. And I believe that that's why these shows are so important right now. I mean, really, to tell you the truth, this is a subject, me, fam. I'm from Boca Raton, Florida. I avoided talking about this stuff. I mean, there was a show with Cynthia McKinney, and I was like, you go ahead and do it with her because I think you get the most out of it. But I'm not going to lie. This subject has always been scary for me growing up in Boca Raton. And one of the most, my school was 1,000 kids in the graduating class, and 75% of them were Jewish. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but now it's time to talk about it, time to get it out there, time to educate, time to let people try to, get people to open up their eyes. And I think there's some people out there doing some great work. And I tip my hat off to some of those populist right and conservatives who were pushing back against what they're saying. We know what it's like to do that when it came to COVID. We know what it's like. But, there's something great at the end of the rainbow for that, for being honest and being principled, despite your clan feeling the opposite way. Fam, the thing that just drives me crazy, getting to this section right now, is that we all have our thing that says, wait a second. If you realize that, you realize this whole thing's a scam. For me, when it came to COVID-19, lumping together, and when it came to the vaccinated, the partially vaccinated with the unvaccinated was the biggest trick in the world, because then the media and the government can go, everybody who's dying is unvaccinated, when some of them were partially vaccinated. And when you understand that, you're like, this is a scam. They're fucking lying. Well, the thing that's a scam for me when it comes to this whole situation is that all this killing right now, all this carpet bombing that Israel is doing is not even affecting Hamas. They might have gotten a couple people here and there, but 95% of this bombing has not even tickled Hamas. Hamas is down deep. It's called tunnel warfare, right? That's what I'm calling it. But they are down deep, close to 75 meters down deep, which those bunker busters can't reach, or any of these missiles can't reach. I talked to Scott Ritter about it. They during their smash and grab operation, which people don't want to talk about, they just want to talk about, oh my God, they murdered civilians and they did this and this. All right, okay. But they went to hit all those military institutions along the Gaza border, and they grabbed all the weaponry and they brought it back in underneath. They're sitting there waiting, and the media is being very quiet. We hear Israel dragging their feet. Why hasn't there been a ground invasion? They said they're going to do a ground invasion. How are they doing the ground invasion? Why haven't they got in? Well, they like to have this image that the IDF is the most powerful, army on the planet, and they're great, but they ain't. It's a chicken shit operation. The Dahaya Doctrine is what it's called. The Dahaya Doctrine. And that's the method of bombing these installations and buildings so that you can't, that the Hamas can't use the buildings for cover, right? That's what they say. The only problem is they're moving around and they're everywhere else, and they're ready to come on out. Israel's not used to that type of actual fighting. So that's why they got their asses kicked twice by Hezbollah. And I've said this too before, is that when you have a invading army that's highly technical and advantaged, right, that has all the weaponry, guns to the nine, right, Predator style, fam, going into an invading land against a small defensive army but knows the terrain, that defensive army has the advantage. They've always had the advantage. Look at Afghanistan. You know what I'm saying? It's a perfect example. They had friggin' rifles against powerful armies, but were able to push them back. So, with that being said, all this bombing is doing nothing but killing the civilian population. And once again, fam, it's a war crime. And yet, to me, it's just like, guys, how can you sit there on your couch, see this bombing, know it's not really affecting the enemy? They're dragging their feet on a ground invasion because they know they'll get their ass kicked, and not say anything and allow this because they go, Hamas, fam.
Yeah. And Israel's not, like you said, they're not going to do well if they do this ground invasion. And I believe they have been putting it off with every excuse in the book, right? They've thrown every excuse in the book to delay this ground offensive. Oh, the weather. Oh, this. Oh, we're not ready. Oh, but they don't admit that they can't. They're afraid to do it because they know they're going to get their asses kicked. They know that this is not, the Palestinian resistance will excel in this. This is what they know how to do. with all the fancy gadgets and all the technology, Israel was able to be defeated on October 7th. They were able to really let their guard down via this AI surveillance that they were so dependent on. And like with the Ukraine war, like the Ukrainians not being able to use this high tech, this highly advanced weaponry, it's the same thing with Israel. They're just not that those weapons, all of that is going to be useless when it comes to the Palestinian resistance and their different specific weapons and their different specific strategies and methods. I mean, it's just going to be impossible. So what they're doing right now is the cowardly thing, and they're going from above and killing mostly women and children, because that's the only thing they've done forever. That's the only thing they've known how to do. But yet we've been sold this idea that the Israeli army is supposed to be undefeatable, which is why people so easily believe the theory that Israel had to let this happen. No, Israel literally was caught with its pants down. They did not expect this. And so now they've been doing a lot of PR, even pushing that same theory, saying, well, you know, some people might have had information, blah, blah, blah. And you will have these IDF soldiers saying all of the stuff that this was impossible and that this didn't happen. But both Egypt and Israel have denied that there was a warning of any kind. So this whole thing is I think what's going to lead Israel into attacking via these tunnels, via a chemical of agent that they've already said they want to do. And they've been sort of, you know, throwing this false flag scenario that it is Hamas that has this chemical agent, even though they're the ones that have been pushing this whole thing. And I think that's what's really going to happen.
A Hamas soldier. This is my Bibi Netanyahu. It was perfect. It was laminated. It said it had chemicals or weapons.
It said Al Qaeda in English, by the way, right?
English. Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I said that on the show. I said, fam, I'm a poker player, so I look for tipping of their hats. I think Israel just tipped their hats that they're going to try to clear out Hamas using chemical weapons and then blame them in the same fashion they did with the hospital, right? It's going to, like, we've seen this game before and stuff. So.
In the same way it was done in Syria as well. Against
Syria as another place, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Do we have a clip, Cheese Slice? My handsome face on Crosstalk, and I don't know if you also have the link. If we can share the link, you know what I'll do? I'll go share the link while you play the video.
In California, one of the things we've seen in looking at urban warfare, it's the Great Equalizer. Okay, it's the great. So you can be barefoot with a shotgun, and you can be an Israeli trained soldier, but you're all equal in the rubble. Go ahead, Pasta.
Yeah, I think history has shown for quite some time a large technological army still is at a disadvantage when they're going in on an offense to play against a defensive army that knows the terrain very well. And, you know, like Dan just said, the IDF is not prepared for this. They're not ready for tunnel warfare. But what's really amazing to me is that all the bombing that's going on hasn't really affected Hamas's military positions whatsoever. Like our good friend Jesse Ventura from Predator would say, they're dug in tight like an Alabama tick. They're down there, and the IDF knows if they go in there, they're not ready for this warfare. So they will be wiped out, if not really taking a lot of damages. Just the other day, they tried to go in the middle of the Gaza Strip, and they've already lost a bulldozer, a couple tanks, and they had to flee by foot. So this is just dead on arrival for them if they try to go in, and that's why they're hesitating now.
Pasa, that's what we're told. I tend to think it would the Hamas inflicted far more damage than we're being told.
And he was talking about Hamas inflicting some damage that they're not that they're keeping secret. And yeah, fam, did you like? I know you didn't appreciate it because you're a youngster, but the Jesse Ventura reference was from the movie Predator, and he's firing up a hill, and all of a sudden his friend comes by, goes, "What's going on?" And he goes, "They're dug in there like an Alabama tick." And then he goes, "But you're bleeding." He goes, "I ain't got time to bleed." And then they bomb them out. But anyways, that was what the reference was. That's why you saw Dan Kova like smirk a little bit, because he knew exactly what it was.
And Kevork was like, what?
Yeah,
because
Kevork watched the Predator, and then he'll understand. Thank you, Jamie. I know Jamie liked the reference. I was like, Jamie knows exactly what. There was a lot of people out there like, he just used a Predator reference. But what I was saying is that those guys were
Hold
dug
on.
in, he said, like an Alabama tick. And that's what's going on over here. Hamas is deep down underground, fam. They understand what's going on. Just like this whole attack, this sneak attack that people want to say, "Oh my God, it was a inside operation." No, they got caught with their pants down, right? They got all their attention directed over to the West Bank, where that's where their current moving operation is going on. Their colonizing operation, displacement, moving people out of their house. In other words, they're moving people out of the West Bank, and I'm sure they threw some of them into the Gaza Strip. But that's where they were concentrating all their efforts, and that's what even Bassem Youssef said. Let's imagine a world without Hamas. Let's just call it the West Bank. So what's the excuse over there, right? That being said, over in Gaza, Cheese Slice, bring up this article real quick. We'll take a look at this. All right, I got to bring that up myself. Excuse me 1 second. So, fam, they're already starting, the mainstream media is starting to prep for the whole situation, because they're starting to start talking about this. It's not just this outlet. It's not just Reuters, but there's a lot of other people. But it says Hamas tunnel city beneath Gaza, a hidden front line for Israel. Yeah, no shit. And it says Hamas has tunnels for attack, smuggling, and storage. They've been storing all these rockets in the region that they've been getting. And this is something else that a lot of people haven't been talking about, fam. The fact is, they want to say, where did these rockets come from? AP had a report, North Korea was selling Hamas rockets. Like, of course, they're going to say Russia. Of course, they're going to say Iran. But the United States and the military-industrial complex has polluted the Middle East for years, selling missiles to militants of groups that they supported, ended up in hands of groups they didn't support. They've been all over the area. Hamas has stocked up these rockets, got them in there underground, waiting. They've also got all the military weaponry from all the border spots in the Gaza from the hit. They are loaded and waiting down there. I'm going to read just a little bit of this, and then we'll move on. Jerusalem, what lies in wait for Israeli ground troops in Gaza, security sources say, is a Hamas tunnel network hundreds of kilometers long and up to 80 meters deep. Those bunker busters can't go no more than 50. Described by one Fareed hostage as a spider web, and by one expert as Viet Cong times 10. Oh, my God. The Palestinian Islamist group has different kinds of tunnels running beneath the sandy 360 square kilometer coastal strips and its borders, including attack, smuggling, storage, and Operation Burrows. Western and Middle East sources familiar with the matter said. The United States believes that Israel's special forces will face an unprecedented challenge, having to battle Hamas militants while trying to avoid killing hostages held below ground, the U.S. official said.
They're not going to avoid it.
Yeah, no shit.
They don't give a crap about the hostages.
They don't care. They don't care. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin noted that Iraq's 9-month-long battle to retake the city of Mosul from Islamic State might prove to have been easier than what awaits the Israelis, likely to be a lot of IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices. They were mastered and practiced in Iraq, a lot of booby traps, and just really grinding activity. Even though Israel has invested heavily in tunnel detection, including a sensor-equipped underground barrier, it's called an iron wall, Hamas is still thought to have working tunnels to the outside world. After at least rounds of hostilities in 2021, Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya al-Sinwar, said they started saying they destroyed 100 kilometers of Hamas tunnels. I'm telling you, the tunnels we have in the Gaza Strip exceed 500 kilometers. Even if their narrative is true, they only destroyed 20% of the tunnels, fam. Dude, I mean, and it just talks about the witnesses, what they came back and said. Fam, this is not going to end well for the Israelis as they try to get in there. That's why, I mean, seeing that whole chemical mass destruction we pulled off the Hamas guy with the English writing Al-Qaeda is just they're tipping their hat. They're going to, now that they've bombed all the civilians out there, which probably pretty much kind of confirms to a lot of people our theory that it's not just Hamas they have beef with, it's the Palestinians. They want the land. They want to colonize it. That's why they're just bombing everything while they're yelling Hamas. But when they do go in there, fam, they're going to be met. And I do have another story if you want to grab it really quick, Jamie, and we'll get Fam's opinion while you grab that up. And you can just put it up there really quickly and then let Fam give her opinion on it. Take a look, Fam. Soldier killed, 3 hurt in Hamas attack on troops just across the Gaza border fence. So they went into the middle of the middle of the Gaza Strip. I believe it's right outside a town called Kissium. And then they had a bulldozer. And my friend was trying to talk about the bulldozer. Well, while they were there, all of a sudden, somebody from in Hamas or the El Qassam Brigade, which is, I think, the same, it's the militant arm of Hamas, popped out, bam, bam, and these guys took off on foot. The soldier that was killed was 19 years old. If this starts happening and Bibi Netanyahu, who already has very little fucking popularity in this country, they were ready to move his ass out there, and they start losing casualties like this, fam, and people start seeing what's really going on, it's going to be a long day. If they want this to happen and they're ready to go through this is just a little taste. This was the first unit they sent in, a little small unit to see if they could. That was halfway through the Gaza Strip. This ain't going to turn out for them the way they think it is, fam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, everything we said is true. Again, it's not even just Hamas. It's not even just the Al Qassam Brigade. It's literally other factions too that are going to be operating in this way and in operating in other sectors that they haven't even released this information because they're keeping a lot of this military information to themselves because obviously they don't want people to know what their plan is, right? Especially Israel in the United States. So I think that they're severely underestimating, and this is something that I've seen people do in all over the world, but especially in the West, people severely dismiss or underestimate Palestinian resistance. They think it's just a bunch of just people with rocks, and a lot of the people that have been killed were a bunch of children and women with rocks, and a bunch of like literally like this one gentleman in where was it Congress or it was a UN. He held like a rock, right? He was holding a rock. They are mostly like a lot of the civilians, but the militant factions and the resistance that has been out there is determined because they have this existential desire to succeed. What else is failure is not an option, in other words, because if Palestinians fail, they will either be one of two things. They will either be entirely annihilated, completely genocided, and disappear from the face of the earth, which is what Israel wants. Or the other option that Israel is pushing for is eventually displacing them, because so many have already been displaced. Millions have already been displaced, displacing them further into the Sinai desert and into perhaps Egypt and into wherever else they need to go. And therefore that the rest of the land that the Palestinians were in would be free for Israel to take. So either way, it's Palestinians, even the ones that are there right now, a lot of them will not leave to go to Egypt because they literally see that as the second Nakba. That is a version to them that would be them being displaced and forced out of the last remaining posts that they have in Palestine. So this is an existential war. When you're fighting something like that, which is what we've seen in Donbass, you have something that you're fighting for that is much greater than what your enemy thinks. And a lot of people dismiss that. You shouldn't dismiss it. This is something that's really real. And they have had all the time in the world to study this and to be able to do and focus on this type of plan. If Israel does this, it is for them to lose.
See, this appears to be convenient. Wag the door, many for Bibi corruption fraud charges. You're absolutely right. Biden low support, Trump's corruption charges, etc. But once again, what is their end game? Their end game is not going to be what a lot of people think it's going to be. I mean, what are they going to drop nuclear bombs on the whole situation? They're going to get the situation that bad. The other countries are not going to sit back. And with Iran and Saudi Arabia joining BRICS, that's the big thing, right? That changes everything now, right? Saudi Arabia has put aside normalization with Israel, which a lot of people thought that, Donald Trump, I'll get it done. I ordered a deal. I'll get it done. We'll build beautiful Trump hotels in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. I'll sign the Abraham Accords and we'll be partners. It didn't work. It's not working. And that's huge. And that's something that people don't talk about what politically Hamas got out of this whole situation. They shut that down. And Saudi Arabia is now talking with Iran. This is a game changer. So it's not like they're just going to get them off that land, easy peasy, shine the light. This is like, that's why we brought up these articles today. That was one unit they sent in there. That country was already near a goddamn civil war. And I'm not saying there's a quick fix to this thing right now at all. I don't even know I can present the solution moving forward. When people go, what's the solution, Craig? If you were playing God, what would it be? Of course, ceasefire first right now, more than anything. Honor the 1967 borders, not so much as a two-state solution, but ownership, right of return for those people who've been thrown out of the West Bank. But that's close to 600,000 people that are in there, new colonizers. 600,000 people, settlers have went into the West Bank and kicked Palestinians out. A one-state solution and then coexist together peacefully. But that's never been able to happen, right? Because they've had psychos running this freaking thing. I always have a hope, fam, that maybe one day a lot of people will see the psychos for what they are, give them the Mussolini treatment, and start to rule ourselves and stuff. The crazy thing is that Hamas, Yasser Arafat, when he was alive before he was poisoned, and I think a lot of Palestinians to this day would have settled for the 1967 borders, which means they only get 22% of that land. Israel still has a supermajority. And if that's the compromise, how do you not fucking take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a point where they would have done that, but I think now the overwhelming majority understand that you can't coexist a two-state. Like, Israel would never respect it. They would just go back and do the same thing. And that's how they feel. And we can't even speak out against Israel, or we're anti-Semitic. So, I mean, again, it would just be repeating the same cycle. What I think needs to happen is a one-state solution, the way South Africa worked. But in order for that to happen, you would have to literally go back and allow Palestinians to take over what they lost, to have access to the land that was stolen from them. You would have to have Israel be able to sign and agree to all of this. And I just don't see the current government and the current population that's there doing that. I just don't know. It would take a severe change, something that would severely change the position of power that they're in for that to happen. And I do think there is a possibility of that happening because of what you just said. Saudi Arabia and Iran, Syria and Saudi Arabia. I mean, we're having these coalitions in the Arab world that are stronger than ever. And all of them have said, we stand behind the Palestinian people. Even freaking Erdogan has gone out and said something in support of Palestinians. And I don't believe anything Erdogan says. He says one thing and then goes out the other. He's extremely both sides, speaks out of both sides of his mouth. But even saying that a few years ago wouldn't have been something I think anybody would have done. But the winds have shifted, and I think we're seeing that develop on a geopolitical level as well.